Well, no American president, from George Washington to Joe Biden, has ever publicly demonstrated or claimed less of a relationship to religion than Donald Trump. He has publicly admitted that he doesn't pray. He might not be the only president who didn't pray, but he is the only one so disconnected from religion that it wouldn't occur to him to even falsely claim that he prays. Donald Trump says he was brought up Presbyterian. After being found guilty of 34 felony counts on Thursday at 5 p.m. in his hometown of New York City, Donald Trump woke up across the Hudson River in New Jersey on Sunday morning at his summer residence in a New Jersey golf club. There's a Presbyterian church across the street from that country club where Donald Trump woke up on Sunday morning. But as is his custom, Donald Trump didn't go to church on Sunday. He never goes to church. Never. After becoming the first prosecutor in history to convict a former president of crimes, the Manhattan District Attorney went to church on Sunday morning, as he always does. It's the church his parents brought him to when he was growing up just a block away from that church.
Now, I just have two words to say now, sisters and brothers. Two words to say, that's it. Are you ready for those words? Alvin Bragg. Come on, let's give it up for our brother. One of the things Brother Alvin said was, the most heartfelt and compelling aspect of the work that he does was this week to receive text messages from his students, his Sunday school students, who were so inspired and enriched by him. And it made me think of something that happened in May of 1954. 70 years ago, we celebrated what? Brown versus the Board of Education. Now listen, sisters and brothers. Thurgood Marshall would not be where he was without the work of Charles Hamilton Houston. But for many years, Thurgood Marshall was a member and steward of the St. Philip's Episcopal Church right on 134th Street. And interestingly enough, he would work with young people while he was a member of St. Philip's. And he told them a story, the young people at St. Philip's. He said, "Why are you in church the Sunday after Brown versus the Board?" He said, "Well, the night that it happened, we all gathered at the Legal Defense Fund, and there was a big party, and I was the first to leave. And everybody was walking around saying, 'Brother Thurgood, why are you leaving so early?' We just won." He said, "Yeah, we won this, but the real work just begins." And so, Brother Alvin, we salute you. We love you. And we know that God will be with you and your family. We pray always for your protection and your peace. And we know from wherever those great ancestors rest, Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley, they all are singing your praises, dear brother, and cheering you on, you and your wife and family. We love you. Let's celebrate him again.
Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice, did his most important work as a lawyer when his office was within walking distance of that church in Harlem. The only woman lawyer working with Thurgood Marshall in that office at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was Constance Baker Motley, a truly remarkable woman. Black lawyers were rare enough in those days. Women lawyers were also rare. But there was nothing more rare in the legal profession than a black woman lawyer. Constance Baker Motley was at Thurgood Marshall's side in all of his important legal victories as a lawyer, including Brown versus the Board of Education. Constance Baker Motley followed Thurgood Marshall into the federal judiciary and served as a senior federal judge in the final years of her life in the Daniel Patrick Moynihan Federal Courthouse in Lower Manhattan, the courthouse where a jury found Donald Trump liable for sexually assaulting and lying about E. Jean Carroll. That federal courthouse, where Judge Constance Baker Motley was only steps away from the Manhattan Criminal Courthouse, where Alvin Bragg works. Donald Trump doesn't understand these people. Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley, Alvin Bragg, people who work for government salaries, never trying to get rich, dedicated to what for Donald Trump is just a word he doesn't understand. Justice. Donald Trump has now met justice thanks to Alvin Bragg. While Alvin Bragg was in church, Donald Trump was appearing on Fox and Friends.
You famously said regarding Hillary Clinton, lock her up. You declined to do that as president.
I beat her. It's easier when you win. And they all said lock her up. And I felt, and I could have done it, but I felt it would have been a terrible thing. And then this happened to me. And so I may feel differently about it. I can't tell you, I'm not sure I can answer the question. Hillary Clinton, I didn't say lock her up, but the people would all say lock her up, lock her up. Okay, then we won. And I said pretty openly, I say, all right, come on, just relax, let's go. We gotta make our country great.
He's lying, of course, when he denies saying that he said lock her up. You actually just heard Donald Trump say, I didn't say lock her up.
Everyone screams, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up.
Lock her up is right.
They should lock her up.
You should lock her up, I'll tell you.
But that's not the most important thing that Donald Trump said in what you just heard him say on Sunday morning. The most important thing Donald Trump said was, I could have done it.
And they all said lock her up. And I felt, and I could have done it.
I could have done it. Donald Trump actually thinks that the President of the United States has the power to lock up someone without evidence, without a trial, without a jury unanimously agreeing to convict, and without a judge actually sentencing that person to prison. I could have done it. No, he couldn't, because Thurgood Marshall wouldn't let him. Constance Baker Motley wouldn't let him. Alvin Bragg wouldn't let him. The defenders of the Constitution from the founders to today would never let Donald Trump lock her up. And now it's Donald Trump's turn to wait until his sentencing hearing on July 11th to find out if Judge Juan Merchan will lock him up.